Hello and welcome to the 5th annual Imagine This Women's International Film Festival. My name is Patrice Francois. I'm the founder and festival director. And today we will be having a talk back with our filmmakers from Talkback, let me get this right, 2. And today moderating our panel will be Gloria. Gloria is a Colombian American writer, translator, and filmmaker, and she is also the co-founder of Pitch Her Productions. Gloria, can you tell us a little bit about Pitch Her Productions and what is it that you guys do?
Totally. Pitch Her Productions was founded because myself, along with 2 of my really good friends, we were working on different projects in film and theater and in writing, and we found ourselves in the minority, as in we were working with a lot of sort of male-heavy crews, a lot of very white male-heavy crews, and we just, we're all talking and thinking like, well, what if we kind of flip this and created a production? We had no idea like what a production company did, to be honest, when we started, but we're like, what if we made a production company that had an 80-20 as opposed to, like the 90-10, 80-20 the other way. Set up with like female and female identifying individuals and non-binary individuals, and then 20 to 10% men. And we just set out to do that. We wrote it in our bylaws and just started making projects with people. Like we put out calls for different short opportunities for series, and we just started creating, and it's been an amazing ride. We have a series coming out soon about public servants, which should be really engaging. And we've done all kinds of projects. Follow us at pitcherproductions.com.org, I think, .org, and on our social media, which is Pitcher for the most part. It's at Pitcher at everywhere. But yeah, it's been really fun, and we're happy to have flipped the statistics for ourselves and for indie filmmakers.
Congratulations. It's definitely needed. And I will let you take over and introduce our lovely filmmakers. Thank you so much.
Great.
I'm just
Thanks so much, Patrice.
Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone on the internet. Thanks for being here with us today. We have a really thought-provoking block here, a really wonderful array of films. I want the filmmakers to just briefly go around, and if you could say your name, the film that you worked on, and maybe super briefly, like in 2 sentences or so, 2 to 3 sentences, what attracted you to the story? What made you want to tell this story or to work on this project? That would be really helpful just to kind of get an introduction and ease us in. So whoever would like to start.
I can start. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here. My name is Monique Berkeley. I am a native New Yorker. My short film is I Hate This Fkn Job. And it's just a short that I had to put out because I felt that I was that voice that hated this effing job. And just a little bit of my, I wanted to document some of my experiences of working in corporate America. And so I did it, and that's why we have I Hate This Fkn Job. It's my first short. I'm very proud of it, and I'm finding that a lot of women are able to relate to the voice of the main character. Her name is Naima Ali, and so I'm happy to know that there's a commonality here almost with the voice of Naima. Sadly, but at the same time, I'm happy that it wasn't all in my head. It's something that I had to tell, and it's crazy how so many other women are able to relate to it. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, up next.
I can go. My name is Isol Towlett. I directed a short documentary called The Grass Ceiling, and it's a documentary that explores how playing sport, team sport for women, can kind of unlock something in ourselves that we are often feel like we shouldn't be welcoming. Our impulses to be competitive and free and aggressive and be whatever we want to be. So and then a sort of a celebration of just being in your own skin. And they're the things that attracted me to making the film.
Thank you.
My name is Helen Alexis Yanoff. I am the writer, director, and one of the producers of The Gesture and the Word. It was something that I came up with when I lived in Paris, France. I was there for 7.5 years. And the film's about a postman who lives vicariously through the love affair that is shown between a man traveling the world who sends postcards back to his girlfriend. And when they stop being made, he starts making them for her. And he gets the help of an older poet who helps him, and he thinks it's for another woman. So for me, what has actually drawn me to it, and what I think a lot of people have reacted to it, is it's very romantic, but it's very hopeful. It's very positive, especially during this time. People seem to be really happy when they watch it, and I never thought I didn't go out to make a movie that was feel good. It just kind of was the thing that I really wanted to do, living in Paris, watching people all the time in cafes, and it just kind of organically came together and turned out to be a story that I became very passionate about.
I guess I'm last. I'm Kid Strange, and I worked on Closer. And how it started actually was my friend knew a bunch of filmmakers in New Zealand, and they were working on a project. Basically, it was just to make shorts about 2020 and the lockdown and quarantine. And I wanted to write some humorous ones because I'm a comedian. And my friend, who knows me very well, said, "Don't do that." Write something a little bit more sincere and from the heart. And the problem with me is I have a lot of anxiety and I'm very sensitive. So I just sort of wrote from my heart, and people seem to like it. So
Thank you so much. And Nora.
I'm Nora Mariana. I'm the writer, producer of Alina, which is a narrative short. We really started working on the project because we were seeing that a lot of the horrors and tragedies of the Holocaust were happening in our present moment. The separation of families, children from their parents, the continuous rise of hate and fascism. So we wanted to look back at history, but this time through the lens of everyday women and how everyday women rose to the occasion and what they did in those moments. Because a lot of times, at least in terms of the Holocaust stories that we've consumed, they were often told from the perspective of men. And it turns out women did extraordinary things and saved even more people and more children than any man did. So that's what drove us to do this story.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm going to start with a few questions. Some will be broader, some will be more specific towards certain films. And then towards the end, if we have questions from people watching, I think Patrice will be sending those in the chat. So we'll bring up a few of those as well. All right, I want to start with talking about sort of the difficulties, challenges, and sometimes dangers of women operating in spaces that society has said or has not built for them, that have been typically filled by men. And how do you all, as filmmakers, whether you are a director or a writer or whatever role you had in your film, how do you approach sort of both the sort of physical enactment of that discomfort and the sort of verbal communication of like in dialogue of like this space that is not necessarily meant for your protagonists? And whoever would like to start, feel free.
Can I ask a clarification, because I'm not sure? Do you mean in terms of telling stories about characters that are not usually, that are underrepresented, or do you mean how we feel as women in spaces where we're not usually
I mean in reference to the films that you work on.
Okay.
Yeah, but if that also kind of spills into your own realities and your own sort of work experience, that's fine to bring that in as well.
I guess I'll just talk about, thank you for the clarification. I felt with my film, I Hate This Fkn Job, and writing from a corporate sort of voice, I felt that it was important to get this story out there, only because corporate America is predominantly all male, um, powerful men that are more times than not like myself. They're from different races and just running the ship as they'd like. And oftentimes, our voices, meaning women, and specifically women of color, we're very much overlooked. We're not at all acknowledged in any way. And so, I've seen this time and time again, whether it's my story or someone else's story. I mean, it could go back generations. And I felt that for me, it was important to just take the challenge and say, hey, write about this, but write about it from what you're dealing with. How are you dealing with it today in today's world, the 21st century? Where are we? Where's our voice today? And maybe it's we've made a lot of strides. We've come a long way. However, there's still, that gap. And so, especially I know for women that look like me. And so I Hate This Fkn Job had to be told from my perspective, because I think we have more of a voice, of a choice to speak our minds today and just be blunt as possible. And I had to do it. That was really where I saw my project shaping up. I had to be as blunt as possible and not really, I wasn't concerned with, I just wasn't concerned with the norm anymore. I'm just like, whatever happens, happens. However it comes out, it comes out. But I wanted it to be shaped in my voice. And I guess the challenge was just doing it, just not being afraid and just doing it. I think that was the challenge. Just say, hey, this is the truth here. This is my truth. And just moving forward with it. And once I got a cast that understood the work, and they were all great. I have to say, I had a great cast to work with, and crew too. They were all on the same page, and we all understood each other's voices and where we stood in the piece. I think it made that much of a better, outcome for us all. I mean, so I guess that's the best way I could kind of sum up my experience with, the challenges of my voice being told through this piece, and from a woman's perspective, and more specifically a woman of color's perspective. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For me, the glass ceiling looks at women in sports. So one of the things that interested me was has really come to the fore in the last few years anyway, but is that idea of there being that the thing that drew me to the project originally was partly the idea that there's so little audience for women's sport. And playing some very amateur women's sport myself, I realized that there's an access that we can get to something in ourselves that's joyful and strong and free. And so it was like it's not really a documentary about sport. It's a documentary about meeting yourself as a woman and finding space in the world and taking space for yourself, and all the kicks that come with that.
I think with my film, what's maybe very different from everyone else's is my protagonist is a man, and I never say it, but it hints that he's on the spectrum, and it's his relationship with a woman and how he's able to communicate to her through the most loving possible way, through the gesture and the word coming together and needing the two things to explain how he feels about her without being that like quintessential masculine testosterone, I'm going to hit on you feeling, but one of love and affection. And also in my film, Eloise, the woman he's interested in, she does a burlesque, the spoiler, she does a burlesque show. And it's the show, a lot of people have mentioned that it's not done in a sexual sort of way. It's done in a very beautiful, um, artistic, creative way where we had real burlesque dancers dancing. No one gets nude. It's done very tastefully. And then her dance at the end is almost just like a little flirtation where she only takes off her gloves. And I think that my experience in film, I've seen a lot of movies where I've been on sets where people are dancing or having sex scenes and things like that, and having a lot of men around me, and having this crew that I had, everything was so gentle, and it did have a lot of mix with women and men. And something that I've seen through my career, I started out in the assistant directing department many moons ago, and I was sometimes the only female in the AD department as a PA, and then as a non-union AD. And the things that were said to me and the things that were mentioned by some of the male crew members, I had to learn a lot about how to be the woman in power. And I've been on set where I'm the director and they ask me if I'm the art director. Or they don't think I'm at all the director because they're like, well, what's this kid doing? And so my experiences through my career has helped me get to the point where when someone tries to teach me what a Steadicam is, and I've actually been the one to choose the Steadicam, I know how to respond to that. And I know how to not put them in their place, but be like, this is not the question I'm asking you. I'm asking you, when are they back? Not what are they doing? So it's been a very interesting experience starting to direct my own work, to feel comfortable enough to be in the director's chair and not apologize for wanting something and being listened to. Because a lot of times they're like, are you sure, honey? And I've had to learn to basically get behind my own words.
Yeah. Good for you. Great.
What you said, Helen, there about the Steadicam example really reminded me of that moment, Monique, in your film, where we have the woman who comes to the reception area and thinks that, this receptionist needs to be like super eager and kind and like have a different demeanor than she does. And it just was like that scene to me was so spot on, with things that I've experienced, with things I've heard friends experience. It's sort of like this unspoken universal, like if you look a certain way, if you're young, right, and you might look like an assistant or an assistant's assistant as opposed to the boss or the person who can call the shots. And same with assault in the glass ceiling. I love that quote. If there's a fella, is there a fella around that can lift this box? And that soccer player being like, I can lift it, like I'm here and I'm strong and capable.
Yeah.
And I love that idea of just, highlighting voices that are not performing for somebody else, are sort of taking up space and owning that space, without necessarily asking.
Yeah. In terms of what Helen was saying, like I found I had a brilliant GOP, a woman, Eleanor Bowman, and I felt without her without her, I would have felt a lot more intimidated. I think in terms of just backing myself, she was incredibly helpful to have that symbiosis with another female on the set.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think sometimes that makes a difference, who's in front of and behind the scenes. Definitely. Did anybody else want to share there before we move on to a different question? Okay, so my next question is for you, Nora, and it has to do with a historical film and approaching a time period that's been written about many times, and looking at this particular story through your lens. What was that experience like? what kind of research went into your approach. Could you just tell us like what you learned, any challenges you had, anything that you are carrying with you to take maybe to another project?
Really good question. Well, the first thing was the research was actually an amazing process. I mean, because it just involved trying to speak to not only survivors of the Holocaust, but just women who went through war and conflict. And so in that process of research, I ended up actually speaking to my mom, who I never really talked to about her experiences as, a Middle Eastern, North African woman who happens to be Jewish, who had to personally find a way to get her family out. So it was a wonderful way for me to learn about our own lineage of women in our own family and what it was like, what it's like for like a regular person who doesn't have much money, who's underestimated at every turn, what kind of strength the woman has inside of her. So I was able to kind of bring that into this project, even though it was a different time period. But of course, most of our research was focused in World War II. A lot of women are in the footnotes of history. So a lot of times there's a whole bunch written about a male, and you have to kind of you have to extract the women, and 99% of the time their story is much more interesting than the main subject. So that's something that I kind of learned. And then once we started making the film, there was a lot of resistance from men that we spoke with about doing the project, which really kind of surprised me because I don't find it very controversial to do a Holocaust film. It's been done before, but there was a lot of resistance. I was told not to do it when we were even filming. My husband directed it. He's a recent brown immigrant. People were yelling racist stuff at him on set. I mean, it was really like when we finished it, we showed it to somebody who's an industry player, white, straight male. He was like, "You shouldn't show this to anybody." So it was really surprising because we didn't think we were doing any. We wanted to tell the story because we had it in our hearts, but we were shocked by how much resistance there was to getting the story out there. It just never occurred to us. And so that obviously made us want to try harder to get it out, and to believe in it and to believe that there was an audience for it. And it's been accepted in over 100 festivals. And I only say that as an encouragement to anybody who feels like someone's trying to put your story down. Don't let them. Do not, because I was really going to bury the project. I was so sad. I was like kind of brokenhearted. I was like, maybe I shouldn't show this to anybody. And I talked to my mom and she was like, don't you dare. I did not flee a dictatorship to have you be this kind of person that doesn't want to speak her mind. So I want to just get that out. If anybody tells you the story is not worth getting out, you don't know. I mean, it might be the opposite. So that's what I took from it, is not to listen to anybody when they're trying to put you down, because as women, and especially, women who come from a minority, Black and brown woman, it's incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard. I have the privilege of being, a light-skinned brown woman. So I cannot imagine, Monique, your experience. I'm very curious to hear from you. People put you down at every turn and they underestimate the talent that's there. And it's very important to believe in yourself, even if everyone else is telling you not to speak up, not to work, not to, like you were saying, Helen, not to be a director. You have to believe in yourself. It's very hard to sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I want to just add a small bit onto that. I love that you said the word underestimate. Lately I've been seeing that word a lot, underestimate. There on social media, there's this underestimate me, please do, kind of to push you, that we should allow that to push us that much more to get our stories told. And if we are feeling ever, I'm learning that if ever you feel that thing inside of you saying, doubting you, then just go for it. Because maybe, for what I believe is that's you must tell the story then. I think everything comes from a higher place, and if we're stuck and we're doubting ourselves, it's that thing that's telling us don't. But that thing that's telling us do, that's giving us the idea, you must tell it. I mean, someone else, at some point will tell that story. So why not, you tell your story at that time, It's only right. So yeah, especially as women, we have to just tell, get the stories out, get the stories out. We're setting trends. We're trailblazing our stories. So yeah, get it out. Yeah, good for you, Nora.
Good for you. Good for all of you. This is I love being around. It's not every day. I've been stuck at home. So just being around this kind of power it's really touching for me. I love what you guys are doing. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, yes, yes. I love the idea of like stepping up when somebody says no to you. It's like saying, actually, I'm going to do it. Like, I don't care what you're saying. Why the hell not? Wonderful. I wanted to ask a question about the time we're in. Haha. The time we're in, which I think is a good segue here, Nora, as you said, like you've been sort of cooped up, as all of us, I'm sure, have been over the past 6 months, over the past half a year somehow. And storytelling at this moment and its role. And Kid, you mentioned that you're a comedian, you typically like to, tell humorous stories, but that when you sat down to write, it was something that was rather heartfelt. How did that come about? What was your process there? Was it influenced by the current time period, or was it influenced by the medium? Could you talk a little bit about that?
So coming into this project, we were just sort of thrown in with a group of people. So I didn't actually know who I was going to work with. I was just the first person and I had to write a story. That was my job. Yeah. And that's how we kind of formatted it, which was very interesting because then, because I didn't know who I was working with, everybody had their own interpretation of my story. And I actually, when I wrote it from my perspective, and I'm transgendered, female to male. So when I got the voice actress, she obviously had to change some words to make it her gender rather than mine. And so I didn't know what it was going to look like until the very end. I just knew that, obviously coronavirus, everybody was in lockdown. We're not in lockdown here in Estonia. I have been doing comedy and stuff like that. And going back to what Monique and Nora were saying, actually, for the same reason, I've started doing my own shows, my own comedy shows, and it's just women and LGBTQ because men are awful. But anyways, moving on. So I sat down and I was writing about, just because I was listening to the news. A lot of the news I'm listening to is American. I'm Canadian, but I listen to a lot of the American stuff. And I don't want to bring it up, but the election is coming and I am not hopeful. I think it's like really bad for Americans right now, like really bad. And I'm saying this as somebody who was born in the Soviet Union. My family fled the Soviet Union. Like, you don't know dictatorship. And I see, like, with all these different movements with Black Lives Matter, and then, immigrants, refugees, and families being torn apart, kids being put in cages. Like, there's just so much going on that it becomes so overwhelming. And then now you have the president saying, oh, let's just put the economy back on, as if like people don't matter. And that's just kind of really fucked up. Like, who gives a rat's ass about money? Money's not important here. And so when I was writing it, I was just kind of really frustrated and angry. And I thought, like, this opportunity to sort of go into lockdown would maybe be a great way to reflect and change everything, to change how we view society, because capitalism is not working. Just overall, we need to start thinking about the future, not just like how we treat each other, but climate change, for example. And so for me, I just want to say, like, get my message out there that we got to start thinking about it. And then it just so happens that I got put place with other women, and that was pretty cool. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes to everything you said. Uh, we, if we can't learn from something like this, I don't know what we're doing. And I think that your film really, really, really brought that message home. And I also thought it was stunning, by the way. Like the animation, I was just like blown away by it. And I think there is power to visualizing this stress and this, I think, sadness and fear. At least someone living in America and every day feeling like in extreme panic as I lay down to go to sleep and like read the news. Um,
I panic with you guys because I'm
oh,
really close to the Russian border. So, I mean, I remember when Trump was president, I had a panic attack all day, nonstop. So,
yeah.
we're feeling it too.
That's good to hear. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry for the stress, but it's good to hear. But yeah, I think it's so incredible and powerful to visualize that and to put it out there and to write it, to tell that story, even though, as a writer, like the sort of age old thing that we're told is like, wait and then reflect and then write about the thing, like wait years until you're ready. I think that's changing, especially when seeing people write about the current time period. And it's like, no, I'm writing right now to connect with people. And the same is true, Monique, for your piece with Colin Kaepernick and the sort of timeliness of that. Like, I forget if it was like 25 African American heroes or something like that, like for the magazine. Like, yeah, tell the story now and let it be sort of a part of the history that's evolving. I think that's absolutely important. I have one more question before we switch. I think I'm going to see if anybody who's watching has questions as well. Um, and Helen, this question's for you, and it has to do with romance because I find a love story very difficult. And I love reading YA, and YA has that slow burn, like love story, and it's just like so fantastic. And I feel like you, in a way, approach that with your protagonist, with your sort of hero that we're following, this male person. So yeah, I wanted to hear a little bit about your approach to sort of creating this character who is not a total douchebag and who is sort of looking um, to be with somebody, to connect with somebody.
Well, like I said earlier, it became an organic thing. As someone who would like to find a guy in this world that isn't an absolute douchebag, and I kind of wrote about someone that had the traits that I would like to see. But on top of it, I had some art school background. I love poetry. I love music. So a lot of that came into it, and the way that what you say to someone, I don't think people think about what they say. I don't think people think about the nuances of language and how it can be used romantically. I love like the Keatses and the old Rupert Brooks and the way that these poets and Neruda used to write about love and how that romanticism has gone away. And I wanted to write something that was absolutely chock full of romance. And as a side note, listening to what Kid and Nora and Monique were saying, I'm actually the daughter of a Latvian refugee, and I grew up in Moscow, Russia. And to write something that is romantic and not have any sort of, just to be this romance that doesn't have any, it has depth, but it doesn't. That's one thing that I was worried about when I made it, is that people were like, don't make it, it doesn't have that that need, it won't go to festivals, no one will want to see it, it doesn't have worth because it doesn't have a political statement. And so I decided to write something that was just pure love. And in this time, I think it's really benefited people because it is pure love. It is the way people communicate with each other and are trying to show each other kindness and happiness and support and beauty and art. And in a way, I hope it gives people a levity, and that doing the slow burn and the way that everything comes together, it was really organic. I don't know exactly how I wrote it. I just kind of did I had notes and I had people giving me information and notes and giving me feedback. And I had these amazing actors that when I listened to them, like Paul Dooley, when he was reciting the poetry, I actually was like, did I write that? I really actually kind of was like looking at the script being like, wait a minute, did he change the dialogue? So it was a very organic experience to make something about love.
Cool. Thank you so much. All right, I have one last question, and then Patrice, if there's any questions from the audience, please feel free to type them in the chat box if you can. Thank you. What's up next for you all in terms of projects, in terms of brainstorming for the future when it's okay to be on film sets again? What's up next? If anybody has something that they're either brewing or working on or excited about.
I just got some funding, development funding. So I work as an editor most of the time, so I'm editing away. And then in terms of personal projects, like myself and two other women got some funding to develop a TV comedy idea called So I Started a Commune, about a female commune. And that's kind of exciting. And the short film has opened doors for me in that I've just been signed on to be repped by a TV commercial production company. So that's pretty cool.
Cool. Congratulations. Holy smokes. That's awesome.
Thanks, Gloria.
I'm actually doing a feature version of Gesture. And so I'm working on that. I'm also working on a documentary about my father and how he left Latvia and came back to the Soviet Union as the last naval attaché to the Soviet Union and the first to Russia during the coup d'etat for America. And he wound up finding his family in Latvia by accident when he basically illegally went on a train to find the family. And I'm also writing a feature. I've been developing one on inspired by the terror attacks in Paris because I was there for that. And I experienced that too close for comfort. And so that's about a group of different women in their different lives that are affected by the hours, days, and weeks and month after a terror attack in a North American city.
Well, I am working on another short. It's called Jamila Speaks, and it's kind of in the light of what Kid talked about, writing about the whole COVID, what we're dealing with during the COVID. And this is actually pointing towards the children. How are our children, our younger adults, dealing and coping with this whole lockdown? So that's what I'm working on. So it's from a child's perspective of this whole COVID bubble we're in. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I just I'm doing stand-up as a side gig. But I normally have a podcast that I just feed my stories through. And I started second season this autumn. It's mostly mostly there are comedic stories, but there's a few serious ones. But in terms of film, I'm trying to relax right now because coronavirus is starting up in Europe again, so I'm not eager to, be out and about kind of thing.
Understandable.
Yeah. What your podcast?
It's called When Tigers Used to Smoke, and emphasis on use. There's no D at the end of that, and because it's storytelling, it's Koreans, instead of saying, like in Korean language, instead of saying once upon a time, they say when tigers used to smoke, which I like.
Oh, okay. What a great name for a podcast. Very cool. And also, if you all, at the end of this, like when we wrap up, I'll leave it on for a minute. If you want to type in anything into the chat, your website, anything like that, feel free. Great. Nora, do you have anything that you're working on or excited about or just sitting with?
Yeah, I'm trying to write as much as I can just to keep myself from going crazy at home. But we're looking at extending some version of Alina into a longer piece. And I'm actually trying to write my mom's immigration story because I learned it through the making of Alina. So I might try to, I've never directed before, but I might try to direct a little piece of it as a short to test it out, to see how I feel. It's encouraging.
Don't try direct, just direct, you'll be able.
I hope so. It's very encouraging. I think I'll definitely surround myself with female crew when it's safe to shoot again, just because, you know, I think I'll feel more comfortable on set. So yeah.
Amazing. You're all so inspiring. I feel happy to be in a world with all of you in it, creating artwork of all kinds. I think that's what it's all about, honestly. So be well, please stay well, stay healthy, and keep making work. Yeah, when people say you can't, just do it. Just thank you all. We're gonna close out here because we're at time, a little overtime. Thank you. Feel free to type anything into the chat for like a minute and then I will close it.